Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special Together San Diego webinar on the link between home ownership and wealth creation. I'm Cruz, Community and Public Relations Director for the San Diego Union-Tribune. This is the second webinar in a three-part series with NAHREP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, exploring Hispanic home ownership in San Diego and how to conquer the complex home buying experience. Joining me today to examine the state of Hispanic wealth and the best practices for building wealth is Mauricio Pérez, National Director of NAHREP, and Jason Riveiro, Executive Director and COO of NAHREP. Thank you both for joining us for this important discussion.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
And for those of you who are tuning in, we want to thank you as well. Jason and Mauricio will go over some interesting facts and figures for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. Remember to put your questions in the Q&A field so we can clearly see the questions and be able to keep track of them. Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Luis. First of all, let me begin by thanking you, Luis, and the rest of the San Diego Union-Tribune family for being such a tremendous partner with us throughout the years, and especially highlighting the importance of home ownership and what we're trying to accomplish as an organization. And so hopefully today we'll be able to continue sharing some great insights for everybody, regardless of whether you are thinking of buying a home or you're actually a real estate professional or just curious about the overall market. I think you're going to get something really important from the facts and the data that we're going to have a discussion. And so thank you again for this opportunity. So if last week you were, or actually 2 weeks ago, if you joined us, we had our Executive Vice President of Policy. She did a deep dive on the overall national opportunity that we have with Hispanic home ownership rates. Today, we're going to continue on the conversation of home ownership, but we're also going to expand the topic to look at the different components, the other two buckets, I think, what we believe, of wealth creation, of maintaining wealth growth. And so if you're not familiar with NAHREP, we are the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. We are a nonprofit trade association. We're currently very proud to be one of the largest Latino business organizations in the country. And we count with over 40,000 members across the country in 80 different chapters, 80 plus chapters. And that's how we drive really our mission of sustainable home ownership. And so among our members, we have individuals that are real estate agents, we have loan officers, we have settlement agents, we have all these different ancillary businesses as well that are interested in creating home ownership for the community. And so joining me, I have Mauricio Pérez, as he was introduced earlier. He is one of our tremendous board members. He is also a broker associate, 24/7 Realty down in Chula Vista, has been there for many years. I know he expands and covers a large part of San Diego as well. Thanks for joining us, Mauricio.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. And for those that might not be familiar, he also, he is a very successful musician and band. He's known throughout Latin America as well. That's for a different webinar, but I don't know how he does it. It's amazing. So we're so glad to have him. And he has some tremendous personal insights as well as some stories about his own clients and how he's been able to help individuals really build generational wealth. So now let me turn into our presentation here. So I promise not to overwhelm you with a lot of slides. This will be very just graphical and visual for you. But I think it's very important to kind of set the stage of this, as kind of I mentioned before, is that we are very interested as an organization to drive home ownership. However, despite everything and our gains around home ownership, we've realized as an organization, especially after the last recession, that it's not just home ownership, but we also need to talk about other areas of wealth building within the community. And so whether you're Hispanic or not, I believe that you'll see a lot of parallels and things that apply to everyone in the community, because all of these three principles that we're going to discuss are really impactful to everybody, right? I didn't know about these things unless someone kind of talked to me about them and I had some guidance. And, some within our community, Hispanics, sometimes we tend not to talk about money. It's something maybe culturally we're not used to discussing, and even having the word wealth can denote some awkwardness around that. And so I really didn't have that personally at home, really people talking to me about money or, how I should plan or any of that kind of stuff. I had to kind of learn along the way. And so hopefully what we're talking about here, we can reach somebody and they can take these steps in it. And I believe that regardless of your age, you still have an opportunity, right, to change those things and start creating wealth. So as we go into our first slide here, as I mentioned, we set up to create the Hispanic Wealth Project. And our goal was really to triple Hispanic household wealth. And so our goal is to do that over the next 10 years. And we've already started to see some tremendous growth within our community, right? And so we're almost 70% of the way towards meeting that goal. Now, mind you, these numbers are adjusted based off the 2019 data that we have. So the Federal Reserve will come out with some additional information that we're actually going to release here later this next month at our NAHREP at Latitude event. And so we'll talk about our latest Hispanic Wealth Survey at that moment. But great gains, right? And so when you go to the next slide, you see really how tremendous that growth has been, because over the past nearly 9 years, we've seen that the Latino wealth has increased by over 84%. And it's the largest increase of any demographic out there. So we have a lot of pride, I think, in calling this out, right? I think this is something we celebrate. And I think part of that, we see that within our own membership. We see that, and that's why the Valley will talk about the importance of kind of networking and having open conversations about money, seeking counsel and advice from individuals that are successful in that area is so very important part of it. And so that's just part of our focus. As we look, though, to the next slide, we realize that, yes,
if I may, I'm big into stories, and nothing hits home like an actual scenario. That, if you would go to the previous slide, that shows people that rent, people that are homeowners. But I have a story that if we can increase the rate of Hispanic homeownership, these numbers would be left in the dust. I had a family back in 2014. They did not have any money for a down payment. He worked at a restaurant in Grossmont. He was one of the head waiters there. Had maybe about $5,000 in his account. What we end up doing with him through a few of the programs that are out there, and that's why it's important to be involved in organizations like NAHREP, because that's how we find out about, Habitat for Humanity has a program where they help first-time homebuyers. Community Housing Works has programs out there where they help you with a silent second loan that you make no payments on, which allows you to get into a more conventional loan without mortgage insurance, and that also makes their offers stronger. So what this family, what we did in 2014, they bought a home in National City for $250,000. I know that sounds incredible in this market, but believe it or not, they bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home for themselves and their 2 daughters with only putting down 1% of their own money. So they came in with $2,500, went through the whole process, and they send me gifts every year. They're so grateful for the fact that we stuck with it, that we found these programs. That same home today is valued at $650,000 8 years later. So if you think about it, they ended up with $400,000 in gains, not to mention the equity that they gained by paying down the principal of their loan. So if you break down $400,000 in 8 years, that's $50,000 a year. Now we're talking about tripling the household wealth to right around there by 2024. The more people we can get into home ownership, we can make that leave those numbers in the dust and reach for higher goals.
No, and that's a great point, Mauricio, because when you look at it from a macro level, when you're looking at just renters, right, the disparity between Hispanic and non-Hispanic is 5 to 1 in terms of wealth, right? However, when they get into a home, we really shorten that gap by only 1.7 at times that wealth difference, right? So that's the easiest way, or one of the best ways to really close that gap, is through home ownership, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm actually interested, as we look at the next slide here, what your thoughts on this, because this is one of the things that we've been trying to really help, and people hear all the time, right? Diversification, right? If you hear that when you're talking about investing, household wealth from a home equity standpoint is so important, right? That's something we've always encouraged as an organization. But going back to my previous points in terms of the importance of also diversifying some of those opportunities, right? So we'll talk a little bit about how it's spread across right now, and especially on the retirement accounts, right? We'll talk about. Does this surprise you at all? I mean, when you look at this, even dealing with your clients in terms of what other areas of savings or investments are they very much also participating in those?
I actually am surprised. I think home equity would be the higher, because as Latinos we don't trust things we can't see, right? And I've always been that way. It took me a long time to get into the market and invest in my retirement account, because I thought, what, people are always going to need a place to live. I can touch it, I can move into it. If I decide to rent it out as an investment property, there's so many things that an actual owning a home represent to a Hispanic family. They go far beyond home equity or part of your wealth. So I think it's that education piece, and it took me, like I said, probably 10 years into my career to start saving, putting money away to my retirement accounts. I believed in properties, and I did end up buying investment properties after buying my first condo. I had equity, and then I refinanced, took cash out, and bought a second property. So there's so many stories of I hear when I talk to my clients or consumers, where they think, oh, I need to have X amount of a down payment to buy an investment property. Well, it's all about planning, and the roadmap is there. It may not be at the timeline that we desire it to be. I have another client who bought in 2017. They bought a 1-bedroom condo, which was small for them. They didn't want a 1-bedroom condo. They bought it down here in Chula Vista, and after 2 years, we all know we're coming off a decade of pretty significant gains in appreciation. They ended up refinancing that property, buying another home, bigger home up in Riverside. They were there for another 2 years, sold that property, finally came back to San Diego, and through those gains were able to be where they wanted to be. It took them 5 years, but they came back. They own a home here, and now they have an investment property as well. So it's not always the road that we foresee in our mind, but if there's a way and you trust the process, the power of leverage in real estate by financing is amazing, and I've seen it firsthand. Every time when you buy stocks, if you buy X amount of dollars in stocks and the stock doubles, then you double your money. In real estate, when you finance a property with as little as 3% down, or you could do 10% down, there's FHA is 3.5% down. If that asset doubles in value and you only put down 10%, if you put down $5,000 and your home goes, $50,000 and your home goes from 500 to $1 million, well, you just made 500,000 with your 50,000, as we saw with the example I gave earlier. So it's really many ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Yeah. Well, obviously real estate is very attractive. And I think your story really in terms of, that you don't trust anything you can't touch, maybe also correlates, in terms of some of the data we've shared, maybe in the past, which is we're seeing actually Latinos at a higher rate than the general population participate in investment properties, right? And a lot more individuals are doing that and within the Latino community. And I think that's what you'll see in terms of sentiment, not just from home ownership standpoint, but I think overall, whenever consumers are surveyed, Hispanic consumers compared to the general population, there is an optimism among Hispanic consumers about the future, right? About the opportunity to take advantage of the American dream. Why don't we continue on here now with our next slide to kind of go into this example that you gave, actually, which is the wealth gains that you see through the acquisition, right? Is that here is really the vast difference. This is a huge amount. And, when you look at just the overall average, right, in terms of Latino renters versus Latino homeowners, the median there is 28 times the wealth, right? That's huge. That it has implications, not just for this generation of home buyers, but really for the rest of, the generations to come, for families. And we know the importance of the impact to that. So this is really where it comes together. And that's why we're so passionate about it. And we talk about it in terms of everything else. Home ownership is that wealth generation. Next slide, please. So going back to the sentiment in terms of planning and buying a home. So if you're a real estate professional, you're out there and you're seeing these numbers in terms of the percentage of Latino renters really planning to buy a home higher than the overall, right? When you compare to different segments, and even in the next 5 years, as they're thinking about purchasing a home, and that might be higher, as you mentioned here in California, it's a little bit higher price, a lot higher price point than the rest of the country. And so, Mauricio, to you, a question to you now that we've seen that, interest rates have kind of impacted everything out there. What are you seeing there in terms of just the enthusiasm around Latino renters and getting them into their first home? Is that motivation still there?
Yeah. So we're coming off, I want to say around April. I firsthand, I remember seeing, okay, my listings started taking longer to sell. I was getting a lot less offers. So from around January to April, it was a frenzy. And now looking at the data, at least in San Diego County, we've had 5 straight months of increased supply. So in February, believe it or not, we had 0.8 months of supply. And this is kind of how, when you hear, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Is it a balanced market? It all comes down to what the absorption rate is, which is how many months of supply are available. And this is to say, at the rate homes have been selling the previous months, if no new homes were to come in the market today, how long would it take for that current inventory to dry up or be sold? And we were running at about, like I said, in February, 0.8, so less than a month. And we've seen that grow steadily for the last 5 months. In July, the last numbers reported, we are at 1.8 months. So it more than doubled. This is the highest we've seen since November of 2020. So we are seeing more of a supply. Now, these are trends, right? We're also seeing an increase, 3-month increase in days on market. Now, obviously, when you go from 6 days on market in April to 10 days on market now in July, 4 days doesn't seem like a lot, but as a percentage, it's a pretty big jump. So I am seeing people kind of go through a knee-jerk reaction of, hey, I'm not going to get a 3% mortgage right now. We're in the 5s or wherever they're at the moment, which can vary from program to program. But that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, especially if you've been sitting on the sidelines or if you've been working towards that goal and now your plans have kind of been ruined by the market. But that being said, if you can qualify to purchase a home, there's no reason why you should be renting, because regardless of what their interest rate is, because you know what the interest rate is for a renter, 100%. So you're either paying 100% interest and giving your money to a landlord, or you can take advantage of all the benefits that come with home ownership and build generational wealth.
Yeah, and unfortunately, renters are also not receiving any relief, right? Rents have skyrocketed as well. So it's either when do you want to jump in, and now is always the time, I believe, right? And so if you're waiting for that will happen. And who knows what happens in the future, right? An opportunity to refinance down the line. But when you look at the overall mortgage rates compared over the past decade or so, we're still in a very favorable market overall.
Absolutely.
If we wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So, and this is kind of that opportunity here, right? Where we say there's an opportunity cost to just sitting on the sidelines, right? So we're seeing this opportunity, and where we see a lot of wealth, I think, that was developed during COVID was individuals that had, current properties and started buying investment properties, right? I know that there was an expectation out there that baby boomers were going to just kind of sell their inventory, and instead it looked like they were buying more property themselves. They were staying in those or buying them and continuing to develop that wealth. So here is kind of that increase that we've seen from investment property. You hit on that earlier in the presentation in terms of Latino participation. And so we've grown it faster than any other demographic. And that's something we want to continue to encourage. And Mauricio, hit on some of that in terms of, I've always thought, and before I got into this industry, that, wow, to have an investment property and all that kind of, you got to have money to make money, right? But, I guess I need to have a lot of money in order to do that. What is the typical progression, or even the story that you might have of someone that's done that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if you're going straight into buying an investment property, you're going to need, depending on the program, around 20% down, 20 to 30% down. There are a lot of, which again, in San Diego, if you're looking at a condominium that's, I'm seeing the cheapest I'm seeing around the Chula Vista area is probably $350 for a one bedroom, right? So if you need 20%, that's still $70,000. So it's some money. But if you get into something and build equity, then the opportunity becomes a lot easier, because as we spoke about earlier, you have leverage, right? You took your 10%, you turned that, that initial investment into something that you can mortgage on and refinance, take cash out, and then be able to purchase the next property. So it still requires some capital, but it's all in steps, right? You don't go straight to the investment property. You buy your first home, maybe your second home, using those gains.
Exactly. So building upon those gains, and even in that scenario, even if your situation financially, where your revenue comes from, or your salary, or even your own business remains the same, your equity is growing, and you can tap into that, right? And purchase some additional property.
Absolutely.
So this is great. I think we want to continue to talk about that. We'll be hitting a lot of these subjects during our conference here in September, in terms of individuals that have done that. How do you get into doing? How do you expand that business? And the next slide, please.
And Jason, also there's some programs out there where you can purchase units. It doesn't have to be multiple different properties. You can buy a duplex and live in one property, rent the other unit, and have that pay for not only part of your mortgage, but I've seen people buy fourplex which basically, single family residents are up to 4 units, and you can get conventional financing, whether it's 0 money down on a VA, whether it's FHA loan with 3.5% down. You can take advantage of these programs, and the county limits for those loans are significantly higher. So if you go from 1 unit to 2 units, you're allowed to have a higher mortgage and still have it be conventional. So there's a lot of opportunities in maybe not buying separate units, or separate properties, but buying 2 to 4 units.
Yeah, that's a good option for first-time buyers as well, right? Because if you're thinking, well, how can I also get into some investment revenue? Well, yeah, buy this multifamily, live in 1 unit, and rent the rest out right off the bat. You have some income coming in. Mm-hmm. So let me just switch the topic now. I mean, we hit on a little bit about the retirement account, right? And so we know, based off of this fundamental of kind of diversifying, there are some perceptions, right, that we're trying to overcome as a community. And when we did the survey last year, and among those that do not invest in retirement accounts, these were really some of the responses that they gave as to why they did not, compared to the non-Hispanic white. And so most think, well, I can't afford it, right? I mean, based on what I'm doing, that I can't afford to take a percentage of my budget and put it into a retirement account, or I don't think it's a safe investment, right? Going back to the uncertainty. And as we know, not just from not seeing and touching the investment, but also, some of those, especially if you're a first generation individual or an immigrant to this country, the lack of reliability and maybe the distrust of the financial systems, maybe in your home country, can also play to some of that perception, right? Compared to kind of doing that here in the United States, and what are the protections around that? So there's always risk associated, right? But we know that, especially following the S&P 500 or the stock market, that we have seen continuous gain and a great opportunity there with the proper guidance, I think. And that's really what's important, right? I don't know how to invest in it. And that's why it's so important, right? To ask the right question, ask the professionals. There are individuals that dedicate their profession to that. Ask someone that is already currently doing, and seek out some advice. And I haven't heard of it. I don't know exactly what that means, or what do I do? And what's the easiest way? Do I just buy one stock, or do I buy, I've heard of mutual funds, or what else? Or maybe my employer offers these things as well. So definitely take advantage of those. So if your employer is offering right now, and many employers offer a matching contribution, you need to take advantage of that, because that's also free money that you're not using. Next slide, please. So despite all the gains, right, unfortunately, our community is at the lowest when it comes to that participation, and it's kind of trending downward, right? I think, maybe that's going to continue. I'm not an economist, but based on everything that we're seeing right now in the stock market, or even if you dabbled in it, an interesting point that we're going to reveal at our State of Hispanic Wealth release here next month will be the talk about cryptocurrency as well. Everybody's talked about that. Latinos have also participated in that, so we're going to discuss that in our report. But these numbers should be higher, right? And there's an opportunity for people to save, to use these investment vehicles and diversify their investments. And here, as we look at the next slide, next and final slide, we look at really the impact to it. We talked about the impact of not buying a home, but also the same occurs when you're not putting away money into a retirement account, right? That at 10.10%, 10 time difference, the wealth that is missed out by those that do not have one versus those that do. That's a huge gap, right? So you're missing out if you're not, and we're here to kind of have more conversation on that. So for that is really the big bullet points of our presentation. So Luis, I'd love to turn it over to you. I'm sure we have some questions and we're here to interact and make it a part of, see what anyone out in the audience has for us to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason and Mauricio. I have some questions as well. And of course, I want to remind the audience that they can post their questions in the Q&A box as well. So please start thinking of questions that you want to ask these two experts here that are with us today. Mauricio, I have a question. So, with the increase in mortgage rates, a lot of buyers, they're standing by the sidelines, waiting to see what's going to happen. What do you say to someone who is waiting? Do you think rates are going to lower and are going to become lower? And what's your advice?
Yeah, so if you don't own a home, I mean, we already saw the data, right? You're not putting yourself in a position where you're going to create wealth. And the example that I gave with that family, the waiter out in East County, he was able to accumulate $400,000 of wealth in 8 years by doing nothing other than what he would be doing if he hadn't bought, which is paying for a place to live, right? So a lot of people, I think, get a sticker shock price when they see their monthly payment, and it was a lot less, last year or the last decade when interest rates were in the 2, 3, or 4%, because the difference between rents and owning a home, the gap was a lot smaller. So what we're having to do now as real estate professionals is educate the consumer. When you compare rent to mortgage, it's not apples to apples. You kind of have to dissect it and show the consumer, hey, this is at the end of the day, if you qualify for a mortgage, it's because you can afford it. So let's look at the amount of money that you're wasting on renting versus what you're wasting on buying. Because I mean, obviously, paying interest is a cost that you don't get back, but there are advantages. There's tax advantages, right? So, for example, I was looking at what the lowest priced homes in, for example, Chula Vista, National City, Lemon Grove, Spring Valley, these areas where they're a little bit more affordable than maybe the city of San Diego or in North County. But we're looking at an entry home level of a single family residence of about $650,000. So if you put 5% down on that property, your mortgage principal, which is principal, interest, tax, and insurance, would be around $4,000. Now, that same home might rent for $3,100, right? $3,200. So when they say, how am I going to go from $3,200 to $4,000? Even though they're qualified and they're approved for a loan, that $800 sticker shock that they get when they say, where am I gonna, cut expenses to be able to afford this payment? What we have to do is, like I said, dissect it and show them that about $750 a month of that is going to go to pay down the principal, which is a type of savings, right? It's a forced savings. You're building equity. So look at it that way. Look at it. Okay, so now instead of $4,000 versus $3,100, once you deduct the $750, which is really your own money that you're paying yourself, you're really comparing $3,250 a month versus $3,100 in rent, right? Now, the other advantage is you're going to be able to use the interest paid as a deduction in your taxes, as well as your property taxes. You can deduct that. That's one of the tax advantages of being a homeowner. So in reality, that's probably another $400 of real savings a year that you'll get back in your taxes. So in reality, when you do the math, the side-by-side comparison, it is really cheaper to own than to rent. Maybe not on a monthly cash flow perspective, but definitely on a yearly and moving forward as an investment, it's way cheaper. Not to mention, if you get a fixed rate mortgage, that's going to be your payment forever. You're not going to rely on a landlord or the changing market conditions as to how much is your landlord going to sell the property? Is your landlord going to raise the rent? Because even with these rent control policies in place, with inflation, you could still get a 9% increase in your rent yearly, right? And I'm not even talking about appreciation, which historically has been around 4% a year, without even mentioning that, because obviously that can fluctuate. We could hit a downturn, and that could. I never tell my clients to bank on appreciation. That'll happen on its own. Historically, it has happened, and it will continue to happen. But really, when you paint the picture of dissecting and really making it apples to apples, it is cheaper to buy a home.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And speaking of appreciation over time, are there certain neighborhoods or communities or cities where you're seeing, that would make sense to buy there, that you see it as an up and coming, I guess, not only as your home, but as an investment?
Yeah, I mean, there's really some areas that if you're looking, for example, as an investment, there's some areas that will give you more of a cash flow, of a return on your investment immediately, but maybe not so much over the long run appreciation. And again, we could spend hours, dissecting each neighborhood. There's a lot of area. Chula Vista has grown immensely. National City, as I mentioned, this property went up more, almost 3x in 8 years. So it's really about finding a neighborhood that you like, that you're comfortable, that fits your lifestyle, and investing in a property, because at the end of the day, it's a vehicle that's going to, in a matter of 15 to 30 years, will be paid off, whether you pay it off or you get a tenant to pay it off, and you will have an asset that you could later use for retirement, for, to pass it along to your heirs. But it's something that can't be taken away from you.
Right. All right, let's get to some audience questions here. Where are the multiplexes most prevalent, 2 to 4 units?
Well, they're all over the place. You just have to, work with the right agent to help you find them. And we're seeing more and more zoning changes where you can add an accessible dwelling unit. You can turn it into 3 or 4 units. Zoning in San Diego has been changing very rapidly. So there's a lot of neighborhoods. I mean, there's multifamily properties in Imperial Beach, in National City, Chula Vista. They're really everywhere. And now with all if you're currently a homeowner and you have equity in your home, let's say if you bought in the last 10 years, you're going to have significant equity in your home. You could refinance, and instead of buying another property, if you have a lot that's big enough, you could build an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard. You could even subdivide the lot if it's allowed to create another single family residence. So really, it's a matter of taking a deep dive as to where you live, what your plans and your goals are. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity out there to take advantage of your current property or potentially buying another home.
Yeah. Along those lines, Carlos asks, what are the advantages or disadvantages of buying land as an investment property to build a multi-family home or duplex?
Well, when you buy land, obviously it's a intricate process trying to go through all the entitlements, seeing if it has the utilities, getting the permits, doing all the legwork that's required to be able to build. I've done this with some partners where we purchased land in North Park and took a lot and created four units. Took us probably about 2 years. And then and it's not cheap either, right? So you have to either get financing, which won't necessarily be conventional financing. So it really takes some savviness and some work to get to that point. Now, if you own a property and you're just adding to your property, that can be a lot easier because you already own the property, all the utilities are there. There's a lot less legwork. Obviously, you have to work with the right people, the right architects and general contractors to get that done. But as part of an organization like NAHREP, we have all those contacts that it makes it a lot easier to go through the process. So I would say, if you're interested in that, shoot us an email. We'll provide all the information here shortly. Contact the association, and we have a lot of events sometimes on exactly how to build an accessory dwelling unit, how to add on to your property, how to buy an investment property. So there's all these different workshops that we have throughout the year. We have 3 chapters here in San Diego, as well as a number of regional and national events where you can learn about all this stuff.
Okay, let's go back to this multifamily units. The question is, why is investing in multifamily units recommended for first-time buyers? Is that recommended?
Well, if you are buying a multi-unit where you're going to live in one, it can be. I mean, obviously, it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to be a landlord, but it's a way to, if you want to do both, right? You can get, like I said, if you're a veteran, you can get into a 2-unit, 3-unit, or 4-unit property with 0 money down. Whereas if you buy a property and then you want to buy an investment property, you've already used your VA. VA is not for investment properties, so you're going to have to qualify, have 20% down payment at the very least, and qualify for that property as an investor as opposed to as a homeowner. So there's definitely an advantage if that's within your immediate, I'd say, short-term plans. You want to buy an investment property, but you also don't own a home. That's a good way to get 2 birds with 1 loan.
I like that. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. The question is, I'm hearing more and more about the increase of modular homes across the country. In general, what are they and what are the pros and cons?
So whether it's a manufactured home, modular home, unless it's affixed to a permanent foundation, it's not going to be considered a single family residence, and it's going to be limited to the type of financing that you can get. There's, in San Diego County, I believe, don't quote me on this, but there's a form called, I want to say, the 433A, which is a process by which you have to get a engineer out there. They have to do certain modifications to the manufactured modular home to be able to be considered a single family residence or a manufactured home on a permanent foundation. That needs to be filed with the county recorder, and if you have that on file, FHA will finance it, VA will finance it, conventional banks will finance it. So I guess the tricky part is, if you buy a modular home or a manufactured home that you just want to put on land, then the financing becomes tricky because it's not viewed as real property, as a single family residence.
And let's see, Jason, Mauricio, this might be for both of you here. Let me see if I understand the question correctly. In terms of demographics, are Latinas better prepared or less risk averse in purchasing investment property?
And Latinos or Latinas?
This is specifically Latinas.
Okay. Look, I mean, I think Latinas as a demographic overall are much better prepared than ever before. I mean, I think, from what we see in trends nationally, they are driving the creation of small businesses faster than any other demographic out there. Those that are employer small business, so they're employing other individuals, and we're seeing it, when it comes to real estate, Latinas, and women overall actually dominate the real estate space in terms of real estate agents, of course. So they are the majority, over 60% in that case. And so, and then a third case that I would say is that we've seen, large percentage women overall are buying homes on their own at a higher rate, a higher percentage than men, if they're single, right? And so single women are purchasing their homes. And so those are some really great, ways to look at it. So to answer the question, I would say yes, just based off of those points I just made.
Okay. Talk a little bit about how you both got into real estate.
So I went to the University of San Diego, and I took a real estate class, Principles of Real Estate, and I really fell in love with the concept of leverage, using someone else's money to build my own wealth, and that really was it. From there on out, I graduated in 2000. I went straight for my broker's license, and I've been doing this for almost 23 years now.
That's awesome. Jason?
So I'm actually not a practitioner. I actually got involved with NAHREP as a sponsor. Most of my career is in multicultural marketing, and I was doing some research back in 2012, and I was doing some research on Hispanic homeowners, and their report came up. And from there, that was how I got hooked. Became a sponsor at 3 different companies, been involved with them for many years, and been in the real estate side now for some large brands over the past 5 years. And so I've been more of supporting agents, seeing them grow, and operationally help execute that and support them. So I'm just here to see what Mauricio is going to do next, and all his exciting stuff. So we're happy that he's a part of our organization.
Well, Jason, talk a little bit about the Hispanic Wealth Project and how it's accomplishing the goals to try to increase Hispanic wealth.
Sure. So, look, we've had a great example, I would say, in a way, in a learning through this organization, right? If you were to look at how we started really talking about Hispanics over 20 years ago when this organization started, a lot of it was around, hey, there's this wave of Latinos that's coming. The increase in homeowners is growing, and the household formations are growing. So you need to be ready. You're going to anticipate this wave. And over time, we're here, right? We're here, and if you haven't seen it, or then you've been under a rock, right, somewhere. And so we've seen it organically grow. Our members have grown to not just be individuals that have that are just casually in real estate, right? Maybe doing it part-time. When you come to our organization, you see very serious practitioners that are doing very well with their business, and they have been able to scale their business over time. I don't want to take Mauricio's thunder, but I think he can probably talk a little bit about also how the organization has helped him. So I say all that to say is that we've been able to learn in terms of some important key elements, that the importance of having a network, the importance of talking about money and about bettering and growing your business openly with other practitioners is so important, right, to creating wealth. So basically, we're taking those foundations over to the Hispanic Wealth Project and expanding it beyond real estate to all entrepreneurs, right, and to all consumers out there, to say, hey, it's important for you to do what we just talked about here today during our presentation. And so we're actually launching throughout the country investment clubs where individuals can participate. We have an accelerator that we're creating specifically in the prop and tech space, to nurture more of these real estate companies, help them scale. And then we, of course, we're very much about education. So we have over 40 right now trainers. We call them certified wealth trainers, and they go out into the community. They reached over 5,000 consumers last year, and we're going to look to really double that. And so educate the community, be out there, going to the churches and the community centers, talking about this message that we shared with you here today. So that is a Hispanic Wealth Project. We have a long way to go. And as you saw, the goals that we have, some big goals, but collectively we do that, and we work with our partners to achieve that.
Now, you mentioned the NAHREP at Latitude conference. Can you talk a little bit about that conference in and of itself, and also the reports that are expected to be released? What more information? And then also, do I need to be a member of NAHREP to attend a conference like this?
No, you don't have to be a member of NAHREP to attend. Obviously, it comes with some benefits to be a member, right? But no, it's open to everyone. And as a matter of fact, Latitude, we've been having our conferences primarily for our members for many years. And 5 years ago, we decided to partner up with Sol Trujillo to help launch this Latitude event, which is really to reframe the narrative around Latinos and their contributions to the economy, right? So Latitude was born. This is open to anyone that wants to attend, where we have almost 3 or 4 Fortune 500 CEOs coming. We have President Barack Obama attending as well. We have Lin-Manuel Miranda. We're going to have a concert there around in Seaport. And we're going to have Juanes there, Farruko. So some great artists. So this has really grown to a consumer-focused event as well, professional event. So anyone can come September 22nd to the 25th there at the Grand Hyatt in Seaport Village around there. So open to everyone.
I have to say, it's a very inspiring. I've been able to attend the last few conferences, and it's always very inspiring to see all these really inspiring, really Latinos and really just successful individuals. You always leave feeling very inspired.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great time. Looking forward to it again this year. And that leads me to my next question here. How can I find a NAHREP representative to work with, or work out a plan to buy an investment property? Where can people get more information?
Well, you got one right here, ready to help, Mauricio, of course. And of course, anybody can call into our office, and we'll help them, connect them with someone in with a local chapter, and make sure you help. But Mauricio is I would totally recommend it. As a matter of fact, I've recommended my parents there in Chula Vista to work with Mauricio as well. So I would trust him like family.
Thank you.
And speaking of Mauricio, tell us a little bit about NAHREP and why you decided to become a member, and how other people can get involved.
Sure. So funny thing is that I used to work back when I graduated from college for our CEO and co-founder, Gary Acosta, as a loan originator. And I think that was about the same time that he was launching NAHREP. It was maybe a year or two old when I joined. So for me, NAHREP is synonymous with growth. I saw this organization go from a small little 10 by 10 foot, headquarters with maybe 2 people on the staff, and I don't even know if they had members back then or not, to be honest. But I've seen the incredible growth, and now, as Jason mentioned, we have over 40,000 members, 80 chapters across the entire U.S. So to me, it's synonymous with growth from different angles, right? From a business perspective, I'm able to meet people from around the country that are more successful than I am, and that pushes me to do bigger things. From an education standpoint, I mean, putting all these reports, I'm always at the vanguard of the information that I need to be able to educate my clients. So that adds value to me and my business. As I mentioned, from a networking perspective, my network is as solid and strong as it's ever been, thanks to NAHREP. And just the vision that NAHREP has had, has the vision that its members have. It's like nothing I've seen. So to me, NAHREP is really a vehicle to help me grow on every level of my life.
That's great. That's awesome. Actually, we just have a few more minutes, so I want to remind the audience, if they have any final questions, to go ahead and put them in the Q&A box. In the meantime, Jason and Mauricio, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, honestly, I just want to thank you again for this opportunity. I know we have another closing webinar, right, in this series that we've put together. And so be on the lookout for that information, unless, I don't know if our moderator here can share in the chat, but we're appreciative of this conversation. And like I said, I know we've been focused here around the Hispanic consumer and the Hispanic professional, but I think there's a lot of parallels for anyone to really take what we've talked about and apply it in their own family and their own lives around finances. So it really benefits us all to be having these conversations. It benefits this whole country to having this. So we need to talk about it more and encourage more people to invest, to save, and to build generational wealth.
Right. Mauricio?
No, just, to reach out to the organization. If you're thinking about buying a property, if you're thinking about, if you have more questions, I know an hour is not enough to go over your specific scenarios, but we'd be more than happy to take time and no commitment, helping in however way we can, and looking forward to a lot more collaborations with you guys at the Union-Tribune, and very appreciative of your time and your space.
I appreciate that. And we got a little message here from Alma Coogan, who says for the San Diego chapter membership, she's the membership director for the chapter, and you can get more information at NAHREP sdmembership@gmail.com. So thank you, Alma. And yeah, you both bring up very interesting points. You don't want to look back on life and be, I should have done this, and I remember, my parents had lived in the U.S. for about 50 years or so before eventually moving back to Mexico, but renters their whole lives. And we always look back, well, what if we had, as a family, bought a home, what would it be worth now, 50 years later? So I do appreciate you putting everything in context for us. Really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with us. It's been great to hear and get to know you both a little bit more. I want to thank Mauricio Pérez, National Director of NAHREP, and Jason Riveiro, Executive Director and COO of NAHREP. Thank you both.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Luis and team. Thanks, Mauricio.
And thank you to those of you who tuned in. We hope you'll join us for our third and final special Together San Diego webinar in this series, where we'll discuss how to navigate buying a home in the San Diego market. That will be held next Thursday, September 1st at 11 a.m. We hope to see you then. Have a great day, everybody.